Hi, this is Mike Crow, and I run a home inspection business. In fact, I've run a couple of home inspection businesses. The true joy for me, though, has been helping literally thousands of home inspectors build really solid home inspection businesses as well. We can help a single-man operation be able to do over $300,000 a year, maybe all the way up to $400,000 a year as a single inspector operation. Even better for me is the 80-plus companies that we have helped be able to build million-dollar home inspection businesses. I would like to help you be able to do the same thing.
We're back with part 2 from the Report Blueprint webinar. If you missed part 1, be sure to go back and listen to it before this episode.
So let's talk about some ABCs of report writing. We're going to give you the answers to some of the most common questions when it comes to reports and report writing. And by the way, if you ever go to a seminar, this is like one of the biggest topics out there. And then I go to these and I am appalled at some of the information that you're given. Oh, you should add more photos. Oh, you should add more of this. Oh, you should add more of that. Oh, you should, and they just keep adding stuff to the report. And then they wonder why nobody will refer them whatsoever. And you've got to make sure that you have that. And then there are some basics, including what I call magic words. And by the way, how many of you think that there are bad magic words and there are good magic words? I'll guarantee you there are both. And I want to make sure that you understand what some of the bad ones are so you never use them in your reports, and then what some of the good ones are so you can really kick things up to the next level. And then how does your report compare to your competition? Most inspectors have no idea. They've never looked at another inspector's report, okay? And then they wonder, what it's like. Me? No. I went and hired the competition and then had my marketing person record the whole inspection and then record the person going over the report. And then I looked at their report and then I would go, man, I like that. Let's add that to ours. And I went, I can't believe he's saying that. God, if I ever catch one of my inspectors saying that, I'm going to hang him out to dry. So it's fun watching things, but I want you to know how proactive I was in the process of this, okay? One of the things is that you need to know that your report literally helps you be seen differently than everybody else. And how does yours compare to your competition? I want to teach you a basic that's incredibly important because most people do not understand that you have two different people that you're doing the inspection for, okay? So the average home inspector, over 90+%, I like to say 95%, and I say beware the 95%, because for starters, a lot of them are teaching you what to do and what not to do. They think that you have a client and a client only, and that is the only person that you have a responsibility to. One of the things that I like to try to help people understand is that there's a client and a customer in every transaction. There's a client and a customer in every transaction. And this is incredibly, incredibly important. And I like to call the customers mavens. My definition of a maven is someone that influences a person to take certain actions. So there are about 15 different mavens for home inspectors or people buying homes that can recommend a home inspection. You got the mortgage company, the title company, the real estate agents, the buying agent, the selling agent, you got insurance companies, all of these. And by the way, one of the best is your past clients could be mavens, okay? The challenge is that people think that they only have one. So I learned this from the real estate world. Real estate agent coaches, I learned a lot of stuff from. So in the real estate world, the seller is the agent's client. And then if a buyer comes along and wants to see that house and wants to buy that house, and they call the agent who has the sign in the yard, and they go, oh, can I see that? They go, sure. And they go, oh, we love this house. Can you help us put an offer on this house? They go, sure. And one of the things that they do is have them sign some paperwork so that they understand that they have a duty of responsibility to the seller and everything, but they can help them get all the other pieces in place. And they will help them get all the other pieces in place. And this now becomes their customer. This now becomes their customer. Agents understand that there's a difference between the seller and the buyer, and one is a client and one is a customer. I learned this when I started getting my real estate license, and they started teaching it to me, and it was the first time I'd ever heard anybody else go, you have two people you have a duty or responsibility to. So I like to ask people when I'm in a crowd or when I've got a big class, who do you owe a duty or responsibility to here? And everybody, or the agent, who do they have a duty? And they always say the seller. And the answer is both. Now, here's where home inspectors, 95% of them make the huge mistake. We go do the inspection for the buyer. Do we have a duty or responsibility to anybody else in this transaction? The people that I'm coaching would absolutely say, yeah, of course we do. But 95% of home inspectors go, no, you have absolutely no responsibility to anybody except that buyer. That is where the people that I'm helping build million-dollar businesses versus building just regular businesses completely differ. And this is where we realize that the maven, who could be our agent, or could be a past client, or could be whatever, we have a duty or responsibility to them as much, not quite as much, but as much as the buyer. And so if it's an insurance agent that referred us, and that agent is referring us 5, 6, 7 times a year, that's wonderful. We have as much responsibility to them to do a good inspection as we do for the buyer. Which one do we have a higher duty or responsibility to? Absolutely the buyer. And you cannot do a lesser inspection because there is a maven involved. You just have to do your inspection slightly different. And sometimes that means giving a little bit more information that other inspectors don't. Maybe it's just how you schedule it. Maybe it's how your availability. So there's a couple of things that really fall into the place there. All right, so the next thing that I want you to understand is that the way you set all of your report writing up is just a cost of business. It's just part of the fact of how you build things and set it into place, okay? And once you understand this, then there's a lot of great things. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a warning. When I'm talking to a new group of inspectors, and so I recently went down and spoke to 70 inspectors in a small town named Houston, okay? And they were gracious, and I have to warn when I'm in a group of that, and a lot of them were brand new inspectors. They hadn't really been in business yet at all. They were still working on getting their license. And one of the things I have to understand is that I tell them that everything I'm going to teach you is up for discussion. Now let me put some boundaries on that. It's up for discussion if you have 6 inspectors or more. It's up for discussion if you're running a $1 million+ company. It's up for discussion if you have been doing this for 10+ years. And it's up for discussion if you have done over 10,000 inspections. And when I say if, I mean all of those. Now, and it's always never fails. So even when I was speaking down in Houston, one guy said, oh, but wait a second, I disagree with that. And I went, great. I said, just clarity here. How long you been inspecting? 6 months. Okay, got that. And how many inspectors do you have? Nobody? Just you? Okay, I get that. And let's talk afterwards then, because I'm not going to, I don't want what you're saying to influence 69 other people here when I don't probably agree with you, but I'll be more than happy to have that discussion with you later. You need to know that 95% of people out there are going to try to tell you what I'm teaching you is wrong. That's okay. Let them wander on down their little low path and be wrong. They'll end up at the dead end. Anybody ever followed somebody through a maze only to hit the dead end, right? What if you got the guide that knew exactly how to go through the maze and knew where to take a right turn and where to take a left turn and could go boom, 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 we're done. That's what I'm trying to give to you today. But if you want to follow somebody brand new that's never been through the maze before, be my guest. Been there, done that more than once, and I ain't doing it again anytime soon, okay? So let's talk about some things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about on-site report versus doing the report later, okay? We're going to talk about the routine of the inspection. We're going to talk about whether you give out some kind of a notebook or something during the inspection. We're going to talk about digital photos and how many that you add into your report, if any, okay? We're going to talk about summary pages. Used to be a huge discussion. Do you put a summary page in? And it was 50% no and 50% yes. And I actually sat on the Texas Real Estate Commission for 6 years and on the Inspector Advisory Board. And let me tell you, that was one of the biggest fights we had back then. All right, and I was sitting there when they were trying to put together the SOPs, or the Standards Operating Procedures, for inspection reports. And we had to kind of do a couple of interesting things to make it work, all right? And then there's the inspection agreement. I know inspectors still to this day that have them sign nothing when they do an inspection report. And then when something goes wrong, then they wonder why there was a misunderstanding, okay? Go ahead, try to go rent a car and sign nothing, okay? It doesn't work. In fact, I love car rental places. They don't know this, and I sure as hell don't tell them. They don't know this, but they go, oh, initial here saying you don't want this, and initial here saying you'll pay for the gas, and initial here saying, you know, you have your own insurance. And I'm going, you bet, not a problem, not a problem, okay? Because in my brain, I'm thinking, I do exactly the same thing on my home inspection. I have them initial here saying there's a 1-year statute of limitations. I have them initial here saying that the most that they can get back from us when there's a problem is this dollar amount, okay? And by the way, in some states that works better than other states. Texas, it turns out it works pretty well, okay? And then we're gonna get into my absolute favorite part of this, which I call magic words. And magic words, man, every one of them is worth $10,000 or more to you. And it's one of the things we'll get closer to the very end that we'll talk about, okay? So there's a lot of great things here that we're going to do. Now, remember I told you Krista asked me to do this, and I went, then that's kind of a weird thought. And so I sent out a question, okay? What's your number one question? And I got a bunch of questions back, and then I started dividing those questions into categories. And I'm going to go through the most prominent questions that I got so that you can see them and hopefully understand some of those as well. The first one that really hit the top of the list and was very important to me as well is it profitable to take your report beyond the standards of practice? Okay? And the answer is no. Absolutely not. In fact, when I first started marketing years ago for our business, and one of the things we would do is talk to the mavens, one of the things I would tell them is we try to stay as close to the standards of practice as absolutely possible. And the agents would go, finally, somebody gets it. You have to understand, by the way, there were no standards of practice when I first started, okay? And I was scared when they first put out standards of practice. And my dad actually came back and went, oh, no, this is a great thing, okay? This is a great thing. Turns out he was right. My dad was right on a lot of things, by the way. I learned so much from him. And so when they would ask that, I would tell them we try to stick as close to the standards of practice as possible. So here's one of the things is, every time you go to an inspector meeting, every time you go somewhere, somebody's telling you, oh, you should add this, oh, you should add this, oh, you should say this. Ask yourself, does the standards of practice need me to do that? And if it doesn't, then think twice about it. And don't just put it in there because some 95% inspector told you should add it. The only reason most of my report changed was because I got 4, 5, 6 phone calls in a month about the same issue, and I went, how do I stop that from ever happening again? And by the way, some of it's not in the standards of practice. I'll give you an example. We're required to check GFCIs, okay? Ground fault circuit interrupters. We're required to check those, okay? Are we required to tell them where the GFCI reset button is? No standards of practice anywhere requires you to do that. In my report, though, we absolutely label exactly where it is. And as I go through what I call my crow's house and I'm training new inspectors, it's one of the things that we require the inspector to mention to the home buyer during the inspection. Why? Because I got 6 to 10 phone calls 1 month about people going, well, I don't think you really checked the electrical because I don't have any electricity on my front porch. Did you reset the GFCI? What's a GFCI? Okay, now I'm making it sound a little hickish because, boy, that's the way it sounded to me when I asked them the question and they go, huh? Okay, so what I want you to understand, what I started realizing was, let's put it on the report, tell them where it is. So even if we didn't mention it to them, I can go, you know, it looks like in your master bedroom, you probably have one. And then I explain it to them, they go find it, they reset it. And now I don't have to run out to the house to fix something that just because there was a misunderstanding. Here's the other problem with standards of practice. How many of you put photos in your report? Show of hands. You have all gone above and beyond the standards of practice. So we all do. So the next most important thing that I've heard, and I've worked with some of the best attorneys in the industry, one, teaching them what I think and teaching them different things. And I was sitting on a board with like 3 others, and they all got this question, and all of them answered it the best they could, industry standard answers. I'm not going to repeat what they said. And then they got to me and said, Mike, what do you think about going above and beyond the standards of practice? And I'm going to tell you, here was my answer. I think it's perfectly fine to go above and beyond the standards of practice And I think it would be a really good idea to create your own company standards of practice. And you refer to them so that people, again, still know where the line is. Okay? Now, I will tell you that in my own company, some days we do better at that than other things. But I'm going to tell you exactly what I think you need to do in that. Number two, how often should I recommend a specialist? So a lot of inspectors go, oh, recommend a plumber, recommend a heating, recommend AC, recommend a roofer, recommend a foundation specialist, recommend, electrician. And here's what happens. This is where this 10,000 inspections comes in really handy, right? Because I'm out there, I'm doing an inspection, and I got through the point, and I had recommended like 6 specialists, right? And then the guy turns to me, and we're standing there, and the guy turns to me, and he goes, can I ask you one simple question? Yes, sir. Anything you want. Why the hell did I hire you? Because all you told me was to go get a specialist for every system. And I went, huh. Now, it wasn't bad enough that one guy did that to me, but then a second, and then a third, and then a fourth. And I realized I was becoming unreferable because I was recommending 2 specialists. So here's one of the things I discovered. Inspectors like numbers. I like numbers. Inspectors like formulas. I love formulas. So here's something you need to know. Try to never recommend more than 3 specialists in any given report. And the specialists that I don't recommend normally are plumbers or electricians, and you can if you want. But here's the other problem that I see. Because of the way some reports are written, the wiring in the main electrical panel for the 15-amp breaker that goes to such and such is double wired, recommend an electrician. The electrical outlets in the master bedroom are show no ground when independently tested, recommend an electrician. And then they go through and they recommend, and they recommend, and they recommend, and they recommend, and they recommend for each and every item throughout the report. I will tell you in our inspection agreement that I simply put a statement was anything we write up, we recommend you get a second opinion on, so that we have it one place, one time, everywhere. Now, with that said, if it's a big item, like, hey, the roof really needs a specialist, we're going to write in, recommend a roofer. And by the way, even that becomes written in such a way as to protect me. So recommending a roofer, and he goes out and he looks at the roof and he goes, well, yeah, he's right about this and right about this, but he didn't say anything about this and he didn't say anything about that. And what about this? Now they're calling you back because you recommended a roofer and a roofer came out, and now he's saying you missed a bunch of stuff. So it's important to write up even when you recommend a roofer. And one of the ways I phrase this, you're going to want to write this one down. Recommend a roofer be consulted for these repairs and any other repairs needed at that time. That saved me more money than I could possibly tell you. And it's important to understand that. So the next question, how many pictures, if any? Well, here's the thing is, when I first did this presentation, pictures were debatable. I literally had one guy stand up in Tennessee when I'm teaching out at the Tennessee Association of Real Estate Inspectors. And he stood up and went, you're going to get everybody sued by putting pictures in and by telling people to put pictures in. And I mean, that's the first time I've ever had anybody stand up and literally chew me out in front of an entire audience. And I pray it never happens again. Because I'm not the easiest guy in the world. Because I like a good fight. That's not true. I hate conflict. But I'm good at it, okay? So there's a slight difference there. So anyway, I try to preempt a lot of that, like I did with this presentation, right? Hey, this is open for discussion if, you've done 10,000 inspections, and if you have 6 inspectors, and if, so anyway. So I try to preempt a lot of that. So here's the thing is, the average inspector puts 30 to 50 plus pictures in their report. And most of you thought that's good. And by the way, every now and then I come across somebody who goes, and it was funny because there was an inspector standing up there, and Jonathan, my oldest son, was sitting there next to a real estate agent who we just happened to know. And he went, I just want you to know, we try to make sure that your client has everything they could possibly have in their inspection report. So we put anywhere from 200 to 300 photos per inspection in our reports. And that agent leans over to Jonathan and goes, what the hell am I going to do with 200 to 300 photos? Because the more you put in, the more confused the buyer becomes. And every real estate agent knows this. Every salesperson knows this. A confused person doesn't buy. And so you have negatively affected that inspection by confusing somebody with too much information. I know a few lawyers, by the way, and you've actually probably seen this on TV somewhere, where they go, oh, we need documentation of such and such so we can review it. And so they send them 6 years worth of documentation. It's a whole truckload of things. And you don't even know if the answer's still in there or not. Maybe they pulled it out. But you've got 10,000 documents now you have to go through to get that one answer that you were hoping to get. If you want to confuse something, then great, do it. But it ain't moving forward after that. And you're unreferable as a home inspector when you confuse the buying process. You can't do that. So adding pictures are great, but I'm going to tell you honestly, I remember when we didn't have pictures at all, and that worked just fine. And then we started adding pictures, and I found out that 6 pictures is the minimum. How did I find that out? Because I had 2 inspectors put no pictures in a report, and I ended up refunding the inspection fee because the people called me back and said, you told me you take pictures and there's no pictures here. And I got another call when a guy put in like 2 or 3 pictures, and they went, that's not putting pictures in a report. So I found out the minimum 6. That's when those phone calls stopped. My average is 12. Think about that for a second. The average number of photos I put in a report is 12. For most inspectors, it's 30 to 50. 18 is considered a lot at my company. And by the way, we have a couple of inspectors that just are camera bugs, and they'll take 100 photos, and we store all of those, but we don't put them in the report. And I think once we pulled a picture out that he had stored that helped us get out of a problem. We may have gotten out of the problem anyway, but we went and pulled his picture, and sure enough, there was a picture of something, and I don't remember what it was. So are pictures necessary? Absolutely. If you're not putting pictures in your report, you're so far behind the curve, I can't even begin to tell you. And so here's the next question I want to ask you. So here's the next curve. What about videos? Those guys that are starting to put videos in their report, they are ahead of the technological curve. And the deciding factor is still out on the videos. If the videos confuse people or make the report too hard to digest, then videos are a problem. If they clean stuff up and help people make decisions to move forward, then the videos are doing their job. Or, by the way, if the video is so clear that it makes sure that they go, no thank you, we're not buying this, and it makes it so clear to everybody why, that's okay too, all right? I've had some agents that tell me thank you after we do the inspection because their client decided not to buy the house. Now, I want to stop here for just a second. Here's what I want you to understand. I've been around real estate agents for 30 plus years, almost 40 now, and I've been around home inspectors for about the same amount of time. Here's what the real estate agents say, and I want you to hear this. Well, let me go this direction first. Here's what I say about real estate agents. There are bad real estate agents, and there are good real estate agents. Because most home inspectors think all of them are bad because they've had a bad experience, and somehow now they put them all into one category, all right? So here's what the real estate agents say. There are bad home inspectors, and look, we all know there's some out there. And the good agents, you know what they say? Here's a good home inspector. And they recommend us. Now, what puts you in this category? Your report is part of what puts you in that category. And your report needs to be simple, it needs to be straightforward, it needs to be clean, it needs to be obvious, and does not need to raise 100 questions.